Hey, everybody, it's Scott Steen with winnersandwhiners.com coming to you with the Hump Day edition of Today in Sports Betting. And we're going to take a look at this Saturday's UFC card. It is fight night, everybody. So I know I'm pretty psyched because we've taken a couple of weeks off from the UFC and we're ready to get back into action. And of course, I got my UFC sniper here, my partner in crime, the one, the only Scott Reichel, joining me. Scott, how are you today, sir?
Doing pretty well. Unfortunately, not necessarily as well as you are, because I believe you made a little bit of coin last night on the truck racing circuit. So congratulations on that one.
Thanks, man. I'm pretty excited. That was I finally popped my motorsports cherry this year. I'd been close, but no cigar. But before we get rolling on that, we want to send our best wishes out to our kind of the guy that runs the UFC is the I don't know what his official title is. He's the UFC Maven Grand Poobah over there at Winners and Whiners. Josh Broom. Josh was supposed to be with us today, and he's got some tonsil problems, tonsillitis. So I know once you get to be post teenager, the tonsil stuff gets to be no fun. It's a lot less funny than it is when you're like 5 or 6 years old. So here's hoping for a speedy recovery for Josh. And I promise we will have him on at some point in the future, hopefully pretty soon, to take a look at some of the UFC stuff. So, shout out to Josh. Hope everything goes well. So, yeah, Scott, I did have a couple plays last night, as I did have Johnny Sauter, who is the points leader there in the Truck Series, and I did have Chase Elliott, who'd been he was kind of stepping down in class. And picked up a nice price on him, plus 350. So yeah, made a little bit of money there as Kyle Busch managed to somehow not win the race. And I guess Chase Elliott actually picked up a little $100,000 bonus for anybody that could beat Kyle Busch in a truck race. So.
Well, the thing that I have to wonder, though, is this might sound kind of dumb because I'm assuming that the entire bonus went to the winner. Hypothetically speaking, if Kyle Busch comes in 5th and you came in 4th, didn't you technically beat Kyle Busch in a truck race?
Yeah, I don't know how that worked. If you'd had, so let's say, if Kyle Busch came in 5th, he had 4 guys that beat him. Do they all get 25 grand or?
I'm assuming the winner got it all, but these are the questions I ask myself about the truck racing, because the whole bounty system seemed a little bit, I don't know, I'd say unique to me when it came to auto racing. But either way, good for Chase Elliott. In terms of the truck racing, I can't say I've ever actually been that involved in watching any of the races or following any of the races, but it's good to see Elliott actually win one after a couple of really close finishes. I think he'd rather have won the NASCAR races, though, in the actual stock car circuit. Just my opinion on a hunch.
Pretty sure he would have rather had the Cup race there as opposed to the trucks. But you know what? You take what you can get. And here's how excited I was about it. I actually made those bets right after the show while I was thinking about it.
You texted me. You texted me later that night and said, "Wow, I forgot I took this." And I go, "I didn't even know you did take it." So
I totally forgot the race was on, and I saw the winner. And went,
you know what channel that's on? Is that on regular television?
It was on regular TV. I think it was on FS1 or FS2.
Okay, because I wasn't even aware. I wasn't sure if you had to go channel diving to try to find it.
No, I didn't have to go to Reddit or try to pull a stream from somewhere. So yeah, no, it was dude, if it was available to me, it was probably pretty easy. So yeah. I'm not, you know how I roll. So our optimism of yesterday with the restart of sports has maybe been tempered a little bit today. Would that be correct to say that, Scott? Do you think after MLB still seems to be oceans apart as far as figuring how to pay these guys? You and I, although both of us were pretty pessimistic about Major League Baseball returning.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say, is that I feel like they might have, ruined a bit of the optimism for most people. But in terms of the two of us, I thought we pretty much got everything right the other day. Yeah. When we had Dave on, it seemed like we said going in, MLB's probably not going to happen because there's a lot of salary cap concerns, and it seems like there's a lot of disarray, and nobody really knows what they're doing. And the NHL, I said that it pretty much seems like 24 teams is going to happen. The only question is when. Now, people are and you brought it to my attention because I fell for the same trap. People were a little bit overly optimistic still with the NHL, saying how, oh, the 24 teams is happening. When in reality, it actually hasn't been announced yet when the league will be returning. They just have already come up with a playoff format, which of course is better than nothing. But there is no official return date. And I feel like people, including myself, got a little bit confused by that. And they thought that just because you announced the playoff format means you're automatically going to be having a return. Not necessarily true. Now, the NHL is hoping for a July return, so you're probably looking at another month, give or take. And baseball, I don't even know if you can wait till July. I really don't know how that's going to work out. Both of us were at 80% no, I'd say a couple days ago. Yeah. I think probably if you ask me right now, I'd probably move that up to around 85.
I was just going to say the same thing. Is about 85, right about. I wish it were different. I wish baseball was able to get it together. But I think, part of the problem with baseball is they're not just really negotiating for this year, but they're also negotiating for the future, or at least with an eye towards the future. And, nobody wants to give too much right now. And it's a bad place to be, my friend. Bad place to be.
It's not even just the major league players. It's the minor league players. There's a serious salary issue with regard to some of the people in the minors and how they might have to actually start picking up part-time jobs or something because they're just not going to be getting paid.
Well, I know those guys, especially
was it the Oakland A's owner who said he wasn't going to pay any of the minor leaguers? I
didn't see that. Is that right?
I'm pretty sure the Oakland A's owner said he wasn't going to pay how do you pronounce the word? A stipend? A stipend? A stipend? Yeah. He said he wasn't going to pay any of the minors a stipend. So I don't really know how that's going to work out. But then again, that's not really affecting the return of the MLB. It's affecting the return of the MILB for the minor league baseball. But that's still that's a massive concern if you're not going to be paying all the people in your organization. I feel like that's a problem.
Yeah, it sounds to me like they're ready. Like the players are ready to punt it, man. I don't know.
Well, let me ask you a question though. If you were going into a season being willing to get paid roughly $1.5 million, and now you're told you're going to get paid $200,000, would you play for $200,000 or no? Because that's really the question you're asking. Now, of course, it's not the same at the top of the food chain. And you could say, well, Bryce Harper would have been making 30-something, but now he's making 7, but you've already made 100-something million. Get over it. The point is, it's not about the high-profile, high-paid athletes. It's about basically the minimum salary guys. It's about the people making maybe less than $1 million a year. And you have to wonder, if you are getting that big of a reduction in salary based on percentages, would you really be willing to work instead of, let's say, $800,000, you work for $200,000? And the answer for most people is probably yes, because you need some sort of income. But you can understand why some of the athletes might be a little bit queasy when it comes to accepting that much of a reduction when they have a contract which says they're going to be getting paid X amount of money.
Right, and that's then they had they had a contingency fund that paid them through basically June 1st, and so they've been getting a little bit of money, and it basically comes down to the fact that they thought that they were going to get a certain amount of money. Major League Baseball said no, that was contingent on us playing a certain amount of games, and those games aren't going to be played. So now we want to pay you less, and the union saying no. I don't know.
It honestly sounds like the framework of a strike to me. That's kind of what it sounds like. I know that it's framed around a pandemic, and I understand that. It seems like most of the issues just tend to be salary issues at this point. And even though the health and the safety could be used as potentially you don't want to say this because it sounds selfish, but it could be used as a bargaining chip, I should say, from the players and all that stuff. At the end of the day, it seems like they just want to make more money, and this kind of has the same fallback that all the previous lockouts had. Great example would be the Blake Snell comments that he made a couple of weeks ago, where he basically said, I'm not playing for less money in the situation. I'm taking the year off. And then the entire, all the fans of baseball on Twitter came at Blake Snell and basically said, how dare you? You're an awful human being. How can you be so selfish? Blah, blah, blah. That sounded exactly like how people would react in a strike. when players said they're not going to play, and then all of the people are cursing out the players, they're defending the owners, when in reality, I don't think it's always as cut and dry as people on social media want it to be. But
Almost never is.
Yeah, the general vibe, though, that he got and the negative feedback had a lot of lockout vibes to me. Am I the only one who feels that way? Because that's what I thought.
No. And I think, and I also believe that Blake Snell is not a lone voice in the wilderness. I believe he spoke for a lot of players that maybe just didn't want to put themselves out there like he did and, take the bullets of being the first guy. I think there's a lot of players that feel that way, especially the guys that are making that kind of money. Now, obviously, these guys have obligations. They have payments. They have, financial things that they have to take care of. But to me, it seems like if you're at the upper echelon, like Blake Snell would be, it seems like you're probably better insulated about with being able to miss a year than somebody that's making the major league minimum, who's just been, up in the majors for, a season or so that still has, house payments and still has car payments, but probably runs a much tighter, much closer to the vest as far as their money goes. I don't know, but it doesn't look good. It doesn't look good for baseball. I think that's the bottom line. We'll give a cautious nod, a thumbs up to hockey. They look like they're still furthest along as they should get going, hopefully getting going sometime in July. Talking about opening training camps there about July 1st.
I'm still going like 75% on yes hockey. I think hockey's actually pretty far along.
That seems about right. And I'm going to call the NBA a 3-2 favorite at this point.
I still don't know what their plan is. They have multiple plans, and it seems like they keep, instead of trying to progress further along one path, they just keep creating more paths. And it's kind of a weird type of idea, but it seems like the NBA is just refusing to commit to anything, and they just keep increasing the amount of ideas in the pool instead of trying to actually work any of them out. Of course, a lot of it's behind the scenes, and you don't really know how that's working out, but I keep feeling like instead of any progress being made on any of the 3 plans that they currently have, you just get the inception of another 5 other plans in the span of a week. It seems weird.
Well, supposedly they've got it narrowed down to 3 plans. I think a lot of them revolve around, if not all of them, revolve around using the ABC/ESPN Wide World of Sports facility down there in Orlando. I think that's part of the Disney complex, if you will. So, we'll see what happens there. And one more thing that is kind of been under the radar a little bit is a lot of colleges are starting to reach out to their fans and talk about what the college football plans are going forward. And good news for sports fans. Looks like they're planning on playing, Scott. I know that Iowa State sent out a letter yesterday to their season ticket holders that said they were planning to go forward with the season. And as of right now, it looked like they would not be selling any tickets except to season ticket holders. So that may be some good news for us as far as getting the football season going. What's your feelings on that?
I am not surprised by pretty much anything you just said. At the end of the day, it's all college football is the main moneymaker for pretty much all of these colleges, whether it's in the Big 12, the Big 10, the SEC also. If you look at any of these conferences, even the independents like Notre Dame, you need college football. And if you don't have that, you're going to have to close a decent amount, if not the majority, of your other athletic programs on campus. Right. And I feel like even though some people are saying it might not be that safe and you have to wonder about the safety of the students and the student athletes and everybody like that, at the end of the day, if they don't have a season and they don't have a fail-safe type of rainy day fund, which pretty much all of these colleges do not have, I think they're basically screwed in the long term. So I think they basically have to have a season, at least some colleges. I'd say bare minimum, probably 50 or more, pretty much really all of them. And that sounds like an exaggeration, but it's not. They all need college football to keep all of their other athletic programs afloat.
Yes.
So even if it's dangerous and you might have to sacrifice the health and the safety of players and of officials and stuff like that, and I know that might not be a great PR move for players because they're pretty much throwing players under the bus in some potentially dangerous, health situations. Either or, I can understand why you pretty much have your hand forced to resume play. So I'm not really going to criticize any of the administrative branches of these colleges or any of the athletic programs for trying to do whatever they can to get the season going. I think you pretty much have to because they generate so much revenue, which keeps the rest of your student athlete programs afloat. So I'm not surprised by this. Are you at all?
Yeah, I'm not either. I think, I don't think anybody's ever going to put it in those stark of terms. I don't think anybody's going to use the word sacrifice.
I'm just being blunt because it seems like I don't want to describe it to the same degree because I know the death rate and stuff like that for COVID is extremely low for people who are in their high teens, low 20s. But it kind of seems to me like that one scene in Shrek where Lord Farquaad, if you're familiar with the movie, he basically just says, some of you may die, but that's a sacrifice I'm willing to take. Like, that's kind of what it sounds like to me, where they're kind of just saying behind the scenes, listen, if something happens to you, kind of sucks, but we're going through with this anyway. Am I wrong for feeling that way? Because that's what it seems like to me.
No, again, I think that's a lot more.
It's more extreme because of the percentages and stuff like that. But that's kind of the vibe that I'm getting, where people in suits are basically saying, you know what, you'll be fine. Just don't worry about it. It's all going to work out in the end, and they're just bringing it back as quickly as possible.
Well, and as somebody that studies odds for a living, I mean, the odds really are in their favor of being able to get away with this. I'm not sure that.
Was my comparison too far out of left field? Because that's really the opinion that I have here. It seems like the athletes have had no say in the matter whatsoever, and they pretty much don't because they're getting their entire schooling for free based on their athleticism to play sports.
Yeah.
So they kind of agreed when they took the scholarship, you're going to be playing sports in order to get free schooling. And if you don't play sports, you can make the argument maybe you won't get free schooling.
No, I think that's absolutely right. And of course, you're putting when you play college football, especially at any level, you're putting your health and safety on the line every time you step on the field.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that from that standpoint, you can maybe make a case that this is just another situation where you're going to have to put your health and safety on the line in order to compete. So,
one quick question: let's just say, hypothetically speaking, you in college were a linebacker your freshman year, right? And you ended up getting a scholarship, and then your sophomore year, you just decided, you know what, I'm done. I've had enough. I would rather just focus on schooling. I'm going to try to go to med school, do something else with my life, right? Would the school take away your scholarship? Probably, because you're not playing. So you can make the same argument that even if players think that it's a health risk and think that they shouldn't be playing, at the end of the day, it's up to the school's discretion on whether or not they should take away your free schooling. And I feel like players, some of them, whether or not they plan on either entering the NFL or entering the NBA or stuff like that, you pretty much are going to have to concede and accept your free exposure in order to try to make it to the next level. So I think that the NCAA, despite what people think about them and how potentially corrupt they are and how they should be paying the players, for the sake of it now, the players are not getting paid, and the only form of currency they have is free tuition. And if you can lose that free tuition, then I think the players have pretty much no bargaining chips at the table.
No, they don't have, obviously they don't have any kind of a union. They don't have any kind of organization. They certainly are at the mercy of the NCAA and their particular schools that they play for. So we'll see how all that shakes out. I probably feel. What do you think? Football 4-1 favorite for both college and pro.
Well, I got to ask though. I need a qualifying statement out of that. Are you talking about? How many teams are you talking about? Because you can have college football with maybe 20 teams, but I don't think you're going to be having a full FCS situation because I don't think the California schools are going to open. I think the California schools California is so far behind the eight ball that I think they're pretty much going to be written off. Am I wrong for feeling that way? Because I feel like California has already announced when they already shut down some schools for the fall semester that California is basically waved the white flag.
So what do you do with the what do you do with the Pac-12?
I have no idea, and I'm happy I don't have to make that decision. But I'm assuming you'll agree with me that since some schools in California already shut down their fall semester, I don't know how you can have a football season with any of those California schools. Am I alone there, or do you agree with me? Because I don't know.
No, it's well, never discount the ability of the NCAA to do some kind of gymnastics to allow their sports to go on, especially their money maker.
I'm just saying, I'm a little bit skeptical to immediately assume that California schools are also going to go all in because they've already prematurely shut down the actual campuses for fall semester in some of the schools. Now, is that the main schools like the USCs and the UCLA? Not that I know of. But no, as long as local schools in that area are getting shut down, that's definitely not a good sign moving forward.
No, and that is probably going to be the most interesting state, I think, at this point, because even New York has said they're going to open back up for training camp and things like that, and they seem like they're a little bit ahead of California as far as the whole the peak and everything like that. So it'll be interesting.
If you wanted percentages for college football, I think that there's probably a 70% chance that you'll see at least 40 college football teams in the upcoming season. Now, is 40 a specific number? I made it up. You can pick any number you want, but I think that the shorter the number is in your head, the more likely it is to happen.
I would say there's going to be more teams than that. I would say I like your 70%. I think that's going to be cover the Power 5 conferences.
Okay, that's fair.
So,
but you might have some exceptions here or there. Some teams just might not be able to, for example, in California. But you also have to wonder, a lot of the preparation that's been going into all of these restarts is the procedure that you would go through or the protocol if one of the players tests positive for the virus. And you have to wonder, how exactly can you continue to play at the same point while quarantining and making sure that it doesn't spread? Football, you're going to have people tackling each other. I mean, people, force of habit, are going to be sharing water bottles, going to be sharing towels, there's a lot of different, I'd say, fluids that could potentially, make their way around the actual locker room. And I think that could be a serious issue. And until you actually find a way to at least do the best you can of preventing the spread, then you can't restart the league. I think we're in agreement on that.
Yeah, I think it's all going to be about testing and the ability to test frequently and have quick results come back. And and then it does come down to what happens if they do have a positive case. And so it's I don't know, a lot of questions going forward. We'll have to see what happens, but for now, we've got sports this week. We've got the NASCAR Cup race tonight, and we've got the UFC card on Saturday. As we were talking off air, not our favorite UFC card, but let's take a look at that and go through the highlights. And let me know what you like, Scott. This is UFC Fight Night, and we've got some prelims, and we've got the main card as well, starting with the prelims here. Looking at Chris Gutierrez and Vince Morales in a featherweight fight. And we know we don't have odds on all of these fights, so some of them are going to be a pass. Scott, do you have any thoughts on this one?
Well, just to be clear, we have odds on pretty much all of the fights. We just don't have prop odds on pretty much all of the fights. So, as you know,
you do there. You do in New Jersey. I don't. With my regular sites, I just had main card mostly only. So, some of these you're going to have to let me know what you've got out there.
Well, as you know, I'm a pretty big exact fight outcome guy. And pretty much all of the prelim fights do not have that at this point on either FanDuel, FoxBet. FoxBet has a couple of bet boosts here and there, but nothing substantial. And until they actually upload those, I might have to take a temporary pass on some of these that I normally would make a play on, but I can still mention what I like. For the first matchup between in the Gutierrez fight, I think that fight's very close. Both fighters tend to love to stand up. They don't really take down their opponents that often. and I think you should see a stand-up battle for pretty much all 3 rounds. So I think if you wanted to try to go for a little bit of extra coin here, if you ended up going for El Guapo here, Gutierrez from rounds 1 to 3 at plus 550 on Fox Bet, I think there's definitely a lot of value there. Do I think that he's going to win inside the distance? Maybe not, but plus 550, definitely worth a look. That's all I'm saying.
Okay. Yeah, it looks like almost half of his fights have gone to a decision. He's won 46%, but knockout 46% by decision, just 8% by
He's got
decision.
knockout power, and you're getting 550. I feel like all you need is one good shot. And plus, it is worth mentioning in this octagon, it will be taking place in Vegas in one of the UFC's like Apex centers. The fun fact, the octagon is actually smaller in the Apex Center than it is in any other place, which means you might be seeing a couple of more knockouts, submission wins, a couple more inside the distance fights because of the fact that you have less room to operate. So you're kind of forcing your 2 fighters to stand toe-to-toe a little bit more, which I find kind of odd. But at the same point, that could work out better for more knockouts and more submissions, etc., because you're not going to be able to run away as effectively as you normally would be in any other octagon. So keep that in mind moving forward.
Okay. All right. Very good. And that is
a factor at all or no?
What's that?
Do you think that'll play a factor at all if the octagon is smaller than normally is?
Oh yeah, I think it has to. In fact, I don't. To me, that's weird.
It is weird, but it's just a fact. It's just a smaller octagon. I'm not really sure why, but it is.
Because a lot of times in boxing, they'll negotiate the size of the ring.
Mm-hmm.
They use that as an actual negotiating tool. So yeah, I think anytime it's going to be smaller, obviously, nowhere to run to, baby, nowhere to hide. So it's definitely going to encourage a lot more action.
The 550 there for a fight that should be primarily in the stand-up and should have a smaller area to actually run away. I'll take the plus 550 there for maybe a quarter unit or something. It seems like a value play for me.
Yeah, I like that. All right, so let's take a look at the next fight here. Another guys that are going to fight somewhere around 135. It is Luis, the Last Samurai Smolka against Casey. No nickname at this time, Kenny. So a couple fighters here that do have some UFC experience. What's your thoughts here, Scott?
For me, I don't think Kenny should be this big of a favorite. So for pure value, I'll take Smolka on the money line, and that is currently available at plus 230 on FanDuel. Market wide, it was pretty much plus 190, and then FanDuel had plus 230. I'll take those 40 extra cents to the bank, and I feel like for value alone, I know people are very into my exact outcomes on the show, which have been profitable in the last couple of UFC cards. It's not available. And when you're getting plus 230, I feel like you don't really need to, reach that far out for an exact fight prop when you're already getting over $2 of value.
Right.
The main reason why, if you look at the track records for both fighters, Kenny's still a relative newcomer to the UFC. I know that he has done well in the UFC. He's only 2-1. So it's not like he's been an absolute superstar who can't lose in this organization. He lost his last fight in a decision. Meanwhile, Smolka's had a pretty interesting UFC career, as he was a UFC fighter all the way up to 2017. Then he ended up taking a break, ended up jumping around to a couple other organizations before making his return to the UFC in 2018 with a couple of other fights in between. So he was actually in the middle of a long 4-fight losing streak in the UFC, which got him pretty much thrown out of the organization. But he's made his way back, and he has won 5 of his last 6 fights. I think that Smolka is a solid fighter, and I think that if you're going to be looking at this fight in terms of value, I think Kenny should probably be a favorite closer to around minus 130, minus 140 instead of high 200s, low 300s. So for me, for value alone, just based on the line, I have to take Smolka here.
All right. Very good. Moving on to a flyweight battle between number 11 ranked Tim Elliott and Brandon Roy Val. Elliott has definitely is the veteran here. He's got 27 UFC fights under his belt, while Royval will be making his debut in the UFC. And I don't have a lot of information on Royval. I know that Elliott is a kind of a submission specialist. Not a lot of power there as far as the knockouts go. So, Scott, how do you break this one down? Got any thoughts here?
So I actually looked into the newcomer last night because I really wasn't familiar with Royval either. Seems like Royval is mostly a submission guy as well. So I expect this fight to be fought on the ground. Mostly whoever can get the advantages in the transition should end up winning the game, or winning the fight, I should say. This fight reminds me a lot of a fight that I actually lost money on a couple of years ago with Tim Elliott, and I bet on Elliott to lose to Mark De La Rosa back in 2017 because De La Rosa was also a newcomer in the UFC, very big submission guy, and I thought Elliott was over the hill. And I figured, the newcomer's faster, the newcomer would be able to at least use his speed to potentially overwhelm an aging Elliott. And then Elliott submitted De La Rosa in 2 rounds, and I lost money. And this fight seems like the exact same situation to me, where I think that fights-wise, stylistically, they're pretty much the same. And you could argue that Royval is the younger fighter, so he's the faster fighter and more athletic fighter. But Elliott has so much experience. He's gone up against so much higher level competition over the course of his career that I think he should just be able to overwhelm Royval on numerous occasions because of just the amount of wars he's had to go through. And Royval is making his UFC debut, which means that he has to take a massive step up in competition. This line's not available. I would take Elliott by decision, and I don't know what that would be. It would probably be somewhere in plus territory, but I think Elliott should win this fight. I think this fight will be close, but at the end of the day, I just think Elliott specializes in the same area that Royval does, so I think he should have a good defensive game plan, and I think you should see Elliott end up winning this on the judges' scorecard. So I'd lean to Elliott by decision.
Okay, all right, very good. Moving on to a light heavyweight bout between Jamal Sweet Dreams Hill against Klidson the White Bear Abreu. The United States features Hill, while Brazil touts their native son there in Abreu. Abreu is a veteran here at UFC level. 15-4 is his record. Jamal Hill just making his second UFC fight, and it should be interesting as Jamal Hill has a 5-inch reach advantage, 3.5-inch advantage as far as the leg reach goes. Scott, you got any thoughts here? The newcomer against the Brazilian veteran?
I think this fight's very tough. It's always difficult to bet against the undefeated guy in a given fight, especially with the way that Abreu's fought lately, who has been okay, but he has definitely not been, I'd say, amazing lately, having a 1-2 record in his last 3 with all of them going to decision. He hasn't been that great in the UFC. Having said that, if we're going solely from a value perspective, this line wasn't available either. But I think if you wanted to go with an experienced underdog, especially with the way that this line has plummeted in most sports books, Abreu opened up at roughly plus 143, and he's down to roughly plus 110. Abreu by submission, I think, has a lot of value to it. And the reason why I say that is that Abreu, if you look at his track record, I know that all of his submission wins have come outside of the UFC. 10 of his 15 wins have come by submission, and he's also a member of a Gracie Association. And as people I've mentioned before, Gracie is known as being the creme de la creme in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. So I know that he has the ability to take it to the ground and pretty much dominate if he has the opening. And I mentioned the smaller octagon. Hill has 4 wins by knockout, 3 wins by knockout, 4 by decision. Has not really interacted that much in the ground game. So I think if Abreu has the ability to take it to the ground, I think he could end it. So for that reason, I'll lean to Abreu by submission for value. I don't know what that line is, but I think with the smaller octagon, everything factored in, I think that is definitely a solid value play if you're looking at this from a value perspective.
Yeah, I think anytime you've got a guy that is won by submission in 2/3 of his fights, I think that's definitely something you have to take a long, hard look at there as the Brazilian submission specialist gets ready to square off against Jamal Hill. Yeah, very good. And moving on, well, we've got this one. Our second to the last bout there on the undercard features Daniel Rodriguez against at this point, as far as the UFC site goes, an unknown opponent. Scott, do you have any further word on who he might be fighting?
Yes, it has been announced who he's going to be fighting. It's a guy who's going to be making his UFC debut. Let me just pull up his name really quickly. His name is Gabriel Green, and he'll be making his UFC debut. For this fight, don't really have any opinions about it. In reality, Rodriguez should win. He's roughly minus 290. It's almost impossible to win a fight when you have less than a week's notice that you're actually going to be fighting in the UFC. Just based on the fact that you've spent your entire career fighting in inferior leagues, and now you're getting the call up to the majors with basically 1 or 2 days, maybe like 4 days notice. You can't put a fight training program together for that. So I think Green's kind of walking into a certain annihilation. Do I really know much about Rodriguez? No. Am I going to play this fight in any degree? No. But if I had to lean anywhere, I think Rodriguez is going to win. So I think it makes sense that he's that big of a favorite.
Okay. All right. And the last fight on the preliminary card is the ladies, as the number 2 flyweight contender, Caitlin Chikagian. How's that, Scott?
Yeah, it sounded pretty good.
All right. Goes up against the number 12 contender and Antonina I really had this. Shevchenko. There we go.
Yes, there you go.
I struggled on the first name, that really kind of surprised me. Chikagian is the blonde fighter. Maybe need to work on that a little bit. And Shevchenko is La Pantera, which I don't know what Pantera is in.
It's a panther.
Is that what that is in Espanol?
Yeah, and yeah.
And of course, as you would expect with the Spanish nickname there, she is from Kyrgyzstan. So, yep. Scotty, what do you like here? This it should be a prohibitive favorite for Chikagian. Is that the way this pretty much sets up?
Well, just to be clear, is that based on everything regarding the records, you'd assume Chikagian would probably be the favorite. Shevchenko is actually roughly a minus 145 favorite in this fight. And just to make it clear, even though the octagon is smaller, the odds for this fight to go to a decision on Fox Bet was minus 400. So this will be going to the scorecards. I feel like based on that, it is worth mentioning. If you're going to look for value, you could really make the case of playing both fighters to win by decision and then just picking up the extra plus money if you really wanted to do that. Of course, it's risky because if any of them win inside the distance, you lose both. But I really think this is going to a decision just based on the track records of both fighters. I'm actually going to lean to Chikagian here. I like Chikagian by decision. I find it really weird that the underdog in this fight just fought for a title. She lost to the other Shevchenko, who is one of the best female fighters on the planet. Now she's moving down to fight against an inferior opponent in comparison to the champion, and she's an underdog. And Shevchenko, the other one, the one that's fighting in this fight, Antonina, hasn't really beaten anybody of note. So I don't really know why Chikagian is the underdog here. For value, I'll take Chikagian by decision. I think this fight will go to a decision. I think you can make the argument taking both of these fighters to win by decision, then picking up the extra juice on maybe a plus 150 and a plus 190, and maybe trying to pick up an extra, I don't know, maybe 0.9 units or so, maybe something like that, trying to free roll. But if I had to pick one play, I would take Chikagian by decision.
And you're not worried about getting burned on the decision like the last time the ladies fought there on the UFC. Was at 249 when they had when it was overwhelming favorite to go the distance, and it did not?
I think that's possible, but at the end of the day, I also had in the main card, I had Gedalia winning by decision as well in the main card, which was roughly minus 300 to go to a decision, and that also went to a decision. Just because one fight ended up in a shocking first-round submission doesn't mean that I feel like you should automatically be paranoid of all female fights ending early. Most female fights in the UFC go to a decision. It's just a fact. It's not sexist. It's not misogynistic. It's just an actual fact based on statistics. Most female fights go to decisions. And I think if you're looking at a minus 400 on a fight to go to a decision, and you could take both of them to win the fight by decision at plus money, I feel like that's just a smart play. Now, of course, the issue is, well, what about a draw? But in order to actually get a draw, you need 10-8 round, which is pretty difficult to come by. So for that reason, I think this should go to a decision. I think this fight will be a toss-up. But I think for value, for that reason, I'll lean to the underdog by decision. So give me Chikagian by decision.
All right, very good. All right, so now moving on to the main card, and that card starts with another matchup between the ladies. It is Mackenzie Dern going against Hannah Shockwave Cyphers. This one looks like it on paper. At least it looks like it should be matched up fairly evenly. Scott, what do you got here?
For me, this is one of my favorite plays on the card. Everything leading up to this, if I'm being completely honest, is pretty lukewarm. It's mostly some value plays on the prelims, a lot of unknown fighters, a lot of people who don't exactly make you jump out of your seat, so to speak, from a fan perspective or just from a casual fan perspective. Same here with the women's fights, but as I just said, that most women's fights go to decision. I think this fight will end pretty early. I like Dern by submission. I think she'll win pretty easily in this fight. Main reason why, she is an unbelievable women's Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu fighter. And she actually fought in international Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu competitions, and she was the number one competitor in that entire circuit or that entire league, whatever you want to call it. So pretty much if this fight goes to the ground, it's over. Just stick a fork in it. The fight's over. Dern's going to win by submission. And the only chance that Cyphers has to win is to keep it in the stand-up. And I don't think she'll be able to do that. I think Dern's will be able to take it down to the mat, whether it's going to be a leg trip, whether it's going to be a single leg, anything like that. If the fight goes to the ground, Dern's going to do something, work her way on the ground, work some transitions in, and I think Cypher's going to look like a deer in the headlights. And for that reason, Dern to win by submission is plus 100 on Fox, but just to show you how favored the submission actually is. Give me the submission. I think this fight, especially with the smaller octagon, I don't think that Cyphers will be able to get away. Give me Dern by submission at plus 100 on Fox bet.
Okay, very good. And Dern has submitted over half of her opponents in her UFC career, so that's seems like a pretty solid play there indeed. All right, moving on to the lightweight battle, we've got Roosevelt the Predator Roberts against Brock Chatatuska Weaver. Both guys are from the United States. Scott, what does Chatatuska mean? Any idea?
Pass.
Okay. Yeah.
Can I use one of my 3 lifelines?
Yes. Maybe call Josh. This was it looks like that Robert's going to be moving up in weight here a little bit to fight this fight. Scott, how do you have this one handicapped?
Well, just for the record, FanDuel and FoxBet actually do have exact outcomes for the main card, so I actually was able to look into this fight a little bit more. Simply put, Brock Weaver, I don't think he's that good. He won his last fight in relatively fluky fashion, as he was on the ground, and then his opponent illegally kneed him in the face, and he won by pretty much disqualification. So he really didn't look good in his fight, but he ended up getting the win anyway. Roosevelt Roberts is definitely the better fighter, as he is 9-1. Pretty diverse fighter. 3 wins by knockout, 4 wins by submission, 2 wins by decision. So I think that this fight is going to be a little bit more unpredictable when it comes to picking an exact outcome. I do think Roberts will win. I think there's a reason why he is a big favorite. But it is worth mentioning that Brock Weaver, despite how much of an underdog he is in this fight, according to the betting markets, as Roberts is roughly a minus 350 favorite in this fight. So people think Roberts is just going to mop the floor with him. Weaver is actually pretty consistent when it comes to going to decision, and he has gone to a decision 10 times in his 19 fights in his career. So for that reason, I think this fight will go the distance, and I think it is possible for this fight to lose as Roberts just takes his head off. But for me, I'll take Roberts to win by decision at plus 145 on FanDuel. Weaver's been known to go to decisions in the past, and I think Roberts is the better fighter. So plus 145, I'll take the plus money there.
All right, very good. You're definitely getting a much better price on going the distance than you just take them flat out. So you're a little bit of a gamble there.
It's tricky, though, because Roberts is able to win in a variety of ways. He can win by knockout. He can win by submission. I think he will do well in this fight. But at the end of the day, do you really want to lay 335, or would you rather just gamble for a plus price? I'd rather gamble for a plus price, from being honest.
Yeah, I'm with you there. If you lose that one, you just
you shrug it off. You lose a unit instead of three and a third.
Right. Yep. Agreed. I like the value there. All right, and now we're going to move on to a couple of, probably my favorite nickname of the card. It is Billy Quarantillo against Spike the Alpha Ginger Carlisle.
It's a good one. It's a very good nickname.
Both of these guys relatively inexperienced at the UFC level. So Scott, give us a little insight in this one.
So one thing that is worth noting is that even though I do like Carlisle because of his power, he has won 5 of his 9 victories by knockout. It is worth mentioning that he is only 5'7", so he is pretty short. And Quarantillo is actually, I believe he's either 5'10" or 5'11". He has roughly a 4-inch reach advantage in this fight. So he is pretty solid when it comes to just the matchup perspective. Now, is it possible that he gets clipped by the Alpha Ginger and it goes down? That was the nickname, right? It was the Alpha Ginger or something?
The Alpha Ginger, yeah. That's right.
So is there a chance that he gets clipped and Carlisle knocks him on his back? Yes. But for the sake of this fight, I'll take the reach advantage. And I also said before with Abreu that the Gracie family is known for being unbelievable Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu fighters. Quarantillo is also from the Gracie organization in Tampa Bay. So he is familiar with the elite level submissions, with the grappling, with all that other stuff, because just his training camp with his organization. He is definitely a solid guy on the ground. And I think that based on that, I think that Quarantillo is the better all-around fighter. So for me, there is one prop available on FoxBet where you can – actually, it's not even available. I thought it was available, but it's not. I do like Quarantillo to win by either submission or by decision. The prop, though, I do not see currently on any of the betting markets, but you basically get to get 2 outcomes for the price of 1. I'm not really sure what that line would be. I was kind of hoping it would be up by now, but it is not. Let me actually see if I can find it really quickly. But just a quick thought, question for you. I know that even if you're not the biggest UFC fan, you are a pretty big fan when it comes to boxing. How important do you think it is for fighters with reach advantage, and how much of an impact do you think it actually has on,
Well, it's a stylistic situation in boxing, whether you've got a guy that's a big puncher, or whether you have a guy that's going to throw a lot of jabs. I think if you've got a guy that's going to throw a lot of jabs, I think the reach advantage is certainly a big factor, as opposed to the guy that's looking for the home run swing. So depending on the style, if you're more of a defensive fighter, I think the reach advantage is certainly comes more into play than it does if you are a more of a guy that's sitting back and looking for the big shot.
Yeah. Well, I know one thing that I agree with that. One thing it is worth mentioning, Carlisle has won each of his last 3 fights by first-round knockout. So if you do want to get a little bit creative, you could take Carlisle by knockout first round if you wanted to go for a huge plus price, which I'm trying to even figure out what that price is. Yeah, Carlisle by knockout in the first round is plus 750 if you really wanted to go for a sprinkle there. But if you wanted to take Quarantillo to win by submission or by points, it's plus 175. And I think that is probably the safer play to go with here. So for that reason, I'll lean to Quarantillo by submission or by points at plus 175 on FanDuel.
Well, if you wanted to, you could even take both those bets.
Yeah, you could. You could sprinkle it.
Okay, very good. All right. And moving on here to the I don't know if this is the co featured bout or just the preliminary, the last one before the main event. This is a Blagov Ivanov.
It's only It's only 3 rounds, so it's just you could say it's the co-main event, but it's just 3 rounds.
Okay, so it's Ivanov against Augusto Sakai, the number 12 contender against the number 13 contender there in the heavyweight division. Ivanov is out of Bulgaria, while Sakai is out of Brazil. Looks like two pretty evenly matched fighters. But now you do talk about a reach advantage. Sakai is 4 inches taller than Ivanov, and that does translate into a 4-inch reach advantage. Scott, what is there any reason to take a look at Ivanov here?
I actually like Ivanov in this fight. I think that Sakai, even though his record is definitely impressive, he's 14-1 in his career. 11 of his 14 wins are by knockout. Definitely impressive numbers. It is worth mentioning, though, he has only been in the UFC for 3 fights. So it's not like he has most of his wins have come against superior competition. He beat Chase Sherman, who fought as the first prelim on one of the last UFC cards. So Sherman hasn't been that great of a fighter. He beat Andrei Arlovsky, who also just fought a little while ago in a split decision, which was a bit controversial that he won. And he beat Marcin Tybura. Tybura's pretty good, but he has been struggling a lot lately, as Tybura, if you looked at his recent record, has lost. He's lost 2 of his last 3, and he's lost 4 of his last 6. So he hasn't really gone up against that great of competition. Meanwhile, Ivanov, even though he is smaller based on height, is still a big boy at 5'11", 251. But if you looked at his last couple of fights, Derek Lewis, he lost in a split decision. I actually had money on Lewis in that fight. He took a beating. Lewis was smacking him around, and Ivanov just ate every strong right hook and left hook with just shrugged it off. He's got a phenomenal chin, and Ivanov is definitely the far superior fighter on the ground. Ivanov has 6 wins by knockout, 6 wins by submission, and 6 wins by decision. He is the definition of a well-rounded fighter because he's able to win in just 3 different ways on a consistent basis. And the issue that I have with Sakai, he pretty much puts all of his eggs into one basket in the knockout realm. So I think that Ivanov should be able to take this to the ground. I think if he takes it to the ground, I think he should win. And for that reason, I actually do like a similar prop to what I gave out in the Quarantillo fight, plus 175 there. I like Ivanov to win by submission or by decision, which is available at plus 160 on Fox Bet. I think if he's able to avoid Sakai's power, I think he should be able to take it to the ground a couple of times, win some scorecards by takedown. And I also have seen his chin, and I've seen him being able to absorb a tremendous amount of punishment in the stand-up. So I think he should be able to avoid getting knocked out. I'll take Ivanov by submission or by decision at plus 160 on Fox Bet.
Let Sakai punch himself out there and take care of business in the later rounds, even though that is just 3 rounds, is what you're saying.
Pretty much. That's my if I was Ivanov's coach, that would pretty much be my advice for him. I would take it to the ground as soon as possible, and I would just wait for Sakai to pretty much gas himself out and work it from there. So, yeah, that's my thoughts on that.
All right, very good. Now that moves us to our main event as Tyron, the Chosen One, Woodley, the number 1 contender, goes up against Gilbert Burns. Burns fighting out of Brazil. Woodley is the American. Both of these guys have a fair amount of experience here. Woodley does have the reach advantage, 3-inch reach advantage, even though he is 1 inch shorter than Gilbert Burns. Break this one down for us, Scott. This is the main event here, sir.
Well, I'm going to be clear, though. Even though I've been profitable in my last couple of UFC cards on the show, the main event has been awful for me during those cards. It is worth mentioning, so keep that in mind.
Noted.
Take this advice with a grain of salt. But for this fight, I like Woodley. I think Woodley is the better fighter. People have gone on Woodley's case a lot over the last, I'd say, year or so, especially when he was champion, on him being a relatively boring fighter. He had 2 fights, which people pretty much took naps in the middle of, as he fought Thompson the second time, which was an extremely boring decision victory that he got. And then he fought against Damian Maia, which was one of the worst title fights of all time. I'm not blaming that on Woodley. I'm blaming that on Maia. Maia has been a submission-exclusive fighter his entire career. And once, I believe Maia in that fight, no kidding, was 0 for 19 in takedown attempts. I think he was 0 for 19.
That's
and you can look that up. That is not exactly what you look for. But people thought Woodley could have ended the fight early, and instead he played it safe. I was fine with it. I thought that was pretty much all Maia's fault for why that was so boring. Then he beat Darren Till by submission, and Till's a pretty solid fighter, and he lost his last fight by decision against the new champion in Kamaru Usman. So even though people might not like Woodley, he's still 19-4-1 in his career, and even though he does have a draw with Wonderboy Thompson in there, he's 6-1-1 in his last 8 fights. He's been really good, and he's also one of the strongest fighters in the entire weight class. He's absolutely just jacked. And Gilbert Burns, he actually fought relatively recently, as he ended up beating Damian Maia in March, as he ended up winning by knockout. He's won each of his last 5. He's also a very well-rounded fighter. For me, I think Woodley is better. I think Woodley's the better fighter, just because I think he's stronger. Both fighters are very solid on the ground, but Woodley, I do think, is stronger. So I think he has a little bit of an advantage in the stand-up department. But if I had to pick one way for this fight to end, for value, I would take Woodley by decision at plus 240 on DraftKings. Woodley can win by knockout, definitely can. Burns is still a very tough guy. Woodley's a very tough guy as well. I think this fight should go the distance. On Fox Bet, this fight to go the distance was plus 110. So it seems pretty close on when it comes to whether it'll go to a decision or not. And I think if that's the case, both fighters are very solid on the ground. So I don't think you should see a submission. I think both fighters should fight pretty just smart when it comes to trying to limit submission attempts, etc. So for that reason, I think Woodley is the better fighter. I think this fight will be close. But I will take Woodley by decision because I think he should get the better in the stand-up. So for that reason, give me Woodley by decision at plus 240 on DraftKings.
All right, that's very good. And that's a nice price at a fight that the over-under has been made at 4.5 rounds. So obviously there's a huge lean towards that fight going the distance. So yeah, good stuff there in the main event. So all right, any final thoughts on this card on Saturday night, Scott?
Really not. As I said before, not many names that you're going to just go, oh, I remember this guy and this guy. No, you're going to be going, who's this guy? Who's this guy? Pretty much the entire time. But that doesn't change the fact that just because you might not know who the fighters are, it doesn't mean that the fights aren't going to be good. So, plus, stop pretending like you have something else to watch on TV. So, you're going to be watching it no matter what. So, you might as well just enjoy it.
Good enough. All right, bud. Good stuff as always with the UFC. We'll be looking forward to tuning into that. And, of course, don't forget we got the NASCAR Cup race tonight. Scott, what are we doing tomorrow?
I don't know.
Okay.
You got any ideas?
No, we talked about doing some. We'll be doing NASCAR again, of course, the end of the week.
Well, I was going to ask you, do you want to only do NASCAR? I know we usually wait till off the air for these discussions, but do you want to do a recap for NASCAR tomorrow, or do you want to just save that for the upcoming NASCAR video we're going to be making?
I think we could be able to throw both the recap and the preview of the Bristol racing.
I agree. I was just curious if you wanted to recap it as soon as possible.
Yeah, we'll maybe take a look at some horses. See.
Yeah, that sounds good to me. I know that you have a couple of, I know especially with the Belmont officially being announced that's going to be taking place in a month or so, you still have Churchill that's running almost every week. You still have Gulfstream. You still got a lot of options there. Unless we're going to dive headfirst into Russian table tennis. So, we'll see.
Not yet, buddy. Not yet.
Not yet.
All right. Well, thanks very much as always for your insights into the UFC. Pushed into kind of double duty there because we thought we were going to have Josh with us. So I know that put a lot of pressure on you. I think you delivered admirably, sir. You definitely went the distance. The over on you being able to do the entire show was it came in well today. So nicely well done, sir. All right, and for all of you, we appreciate you watching us. And we're Scott and I are both looking forward to the day when we can maybe branch out a little bit and talk a little more NBA, maybe even some. I never thought I'd look forward to the day when hockey was coming back, when that would be like the big thing to talk about. But yet, here we are. It's been a weird spring and going into a weird summer, so we'll just have to see how all that plays out. We appreciate you guys coming along, taking the ride with us as we try to have a little fun every day and let you know what's happening today in sports betting. So, Scott, thanks for joining us as always.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's always a fun time. Yeah, I wasn't sure if I was supposed to respond to that because we both co-host the show. But yeah,
I know.
yeah, it's always nice to talk about sports. As you know, I'm pretty passionate about MMA. At least a lot more passionate than you are about it, but I feel like you might start to come around to it.
I'm getting there. I'm starting to recognize some of the names. I'm starting to put the stuff together. So, yes, I'm becoming a fan, and I'm watching the events. So, yeah, we'll see what happens. Stranger things have happened, my friend.
Yep, and hopefully each of us have a nice profitable NASCAR race tonight. So we'll see.
I'm ready. All right. Well, for myself, for Scott Reichel, for all of us over here at winnersandwhiners.com, by the way, don't forget to stop by and check out Winners and Whiners, still churning out great content each and every day. So stop by and check that out, won't you please? And for all of us, until next time, I'm Scott Steen. He is Scott Reichel. You guys stay safe. Have a great day. We'll look forward to talking to you again tomorrow when we talk about today in sports betting. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.